Hey guys, tonight we're stepping back into a time of velvet-lined salons and grimy cobblestones, powdered wigs, and lice-infested scalps. The French Revolution wasn't just guillotines and liberty chants. It was also the stench of unwashed bodies, chamber pots flying out windows, and noble perfume trying to cover up rot. You're standing in the middle of 18th century Paris, and the air around you is thick with the mix of boiled cabbage, burning tallow, and something more human. You're walking past a grand townhouse where beneath the silk gowns and powdered faces lies a world of hygiene so primitive it would make a medieval peasant wrinkle their nose. Truth is, if you lived through this, you'd be lucky to survive the smells, never mind the revolution. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're at it, post your location and what time you're listening. Always fun to see where in the world we're drifting off together. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You press your hand to your nose instinctively, but it doesn't help. You're on the Rue Saint-Honoré, a fashionable street by name, but less so by scent. The cobblestones beneath your feet are slick with something you'd rather not identify, and a carriage rattles by its wheels, splashing the edge of your boot with, again, better not to dwell. The noblewoman riding in that carriage, she looks pristine in her towering coiffure and ivory dress. But you know now that beneath all that is a body that hasn't seen clean water in weeks, maybe months. And she'd proudly admit it. Because in revolutionary France, bathing wasn't fashionable. In fact, it was feared. The prevailing medical wisdom drawn from centuries of miasma theory held that water opened the pores and let disease inside. A bath could kill you, literally. Doctors said so. So people washed, selectively. A dab here, a splash there. They used linen cloths called dry baths and changed their undergarments, often believing that clean linens absorbed body filth. The body, meanwhile, went untouched. But the perfumes liberally applied. Over filth, over sweat, over skin that itched beneath brocade and corset stays. Now you find yourself in a wealthy home, a hotel particulier with servants busy arranging silverware for a late supper. The dining room is lit by beeswax candles, but even their sweet scent can't quite mask the mildew creeping through the stone. In the corner stands a commode, a sort of elegant chair with a hidden chamber pot inside. A guest may excuse themselves and relieve their bowels just feet away from the table, and no one bats an eye. It's simply how it's done. The chamber pot will be emptied later, probably tossed into the street. Yes, into the street. The laws said it had to be done at night, with a warning cry of garde à l'eau, watch out for the water. But often the warning came after the splash. Streets reeked of human waste, animal droppings, rotting vegetables, and the occasional bloated rat. Public sanitation was non-existent. Paris had sewers, but they were ancient and broken, and most people didn't bother with them anyway. Why lug waste down narrow stairs and blocks away when gravity did the job from a window? So you walk on past bread sellers and fishmongers trying not to gag. Even revolutionaries shouting for liberté and égalité couldn't escape the stink. Their sweaty armpits, greased hair, and grime-crusted fingernails were just as much a part of the revolution as the pamphlets and speeches. And the Jacobins, for all their moralizing, weren't particularly known for their soap habits. Soap, by the way, was a curious thing. The finest came from Marseille, olive oil-based and gentle on the skin, but it was expensive. The poor used animal fat varieties, harsh and gray if they used any at all. Many didn't, Soap was taxed before the revolution, and even afterward it remained a luxury. You might go weeks without scrubbing your skin, and when you finally did, it was often just your hands and face, and even that was considered sufficient. In a poorer home now, just a single room shared by a family of 5. There's no sink, no toilet, no running water. A shared privy down the street, if one exists, is full to the brim and never cleaned. Chamber pots, again, are the norm. And water is fetched in buckets from a communal fountain, or the river, both teeming with disease. Cholera wasn't known yet, but dysentery was a regular visitor. Clothes rarely washed. A Revolution-era peasant might own 1 shirt, maybe 2. Washing was labor-intensive and best left for special occasions, holidays, weddings, executions. Instead, clothes were beaten, brushed, and aired out. And since urine was used as a natural bleach, some launderers soaked clothes in it overnight, believing the ammonia did the trick. Technically, it did, but you wouldn't want to smell the results. You start to understand that French hygiene in the 1790s wasn't simply a matter of ignorance. It was cultural, medical, even political. Cleanliness didn't mean daily showers and minty toothpaste. It meant not looking like a vagrant. It meant lace collars, a well-curled wig, and shoes polished bright, never mind the vermin scurrying through your powdered hair at night. You looked good, and that was what mattered. And in fact, cleanliness was often associated with suspicion. Who had time to bathe when the people starved? Who could afford luxury soap when bread cost a week's wages? To be too clean was to appear aristocratic. To appear aristocratic was to flirt with danger. In 1793, cleanliness could cost you your head. Better to look a little grimy, a little desperate, a little of the people. In prisons, the situation was worse still. The conciergerie, for instance, final stop before the guillotine, was notorious for its filth. Damp stone floors, overflowing buckets, lice, and the sickly stench of fear and decay. Here you wouldn't just smell your own body's decline, you'd hear it in the moans of the condemned beside you, some of whom hadn't been outside in weeks. Their clothes stiff with dirt, their hair matted, their skin gray. There was no need to look clean when death was knocking. The revolution demanded your soul, not your soap. And so you begin to drift into a world where hygiene was a patchwork of superstition and tradition, where water was feared and perfume reigned, where chamber pots ruled the rooftops, and soap was a sign of class war. But that's only the beginning, because things are about to get even messier. You make your way down a narrow alley behind one of Paris's bustling markets, Les Halles, perhaps. Here the smell is no longer just bad, it's personal. The heat radiates from the stone walls, thickening the sour cocktail of spoiled fish, bloodied straw, fermented cabbage, and sweaty bodies pressed together under layers of wool and linen. You hear coughing from a nearby doorway. A child wipes their nose on a sleeve already stiff with grime. A man relieves himself against a wooden wall casually, as if he were adjusting his hat. And no one notices, because this is normal. Revolution or not, the great unwashed masses were exactly that, unwashed. And yet they had rules unspoken but followed. You didn't clean your body much, but you brushed your shoes. You didn't scrub your skin, but you scraped your nails. And if you were really unlucky, you visited the barber surgeon. He didn't just cut your hair, he extracted lice, yanked teeth, and sometimes lanced boils with the same instruments. Dull blades and zero sterilization. A trip to him was a gamble you might leave with a fresh face or an infection that killed you. The barbershops themselves were no better. Picture an overlit room with cracked mirrors and floors sticky from a mix of sweat, grease, and often blood. Straight razors dipped in tepid water between clients, hands wiped on aprons never washed. But men still lined up, because appearances mattered more than smells. In the age of the revolution, everyone was being watched. Your neighbors, your family, the Comité de Salut Public. You wanted to look like you belonged, and in some twisted way, a clean shave with a festering razor said just that. Meanwhile, the aristocracy, still clinging to the rituals of the Ancien Régime, had their own hygiene codes. The Palace of Versailles was no longer the seat of power, but the habits lingered. You remember those portraits, the nobles in satin and pearls, with skin so pale it looked powdered in death. That wasn't just makeup, it was survival camouflage. The paler your skin, the more you proved you didn't toil, that you didn't sweat, that you didn't stink. Of course they all did. But that's what perfume was for. A noblewoman might spend hours getting dressed, attended by valets and maids, having aromatic oils dabbed behind her ears, down her chest, at the backs of her knees. She'd freshen her mouth with a clove, perhaps rinse with a wine-based elixir. But brushing her teeth? Not likely. Toothbrushes were rare, and toothpaste, when it existed, was often homemade, combining powdered brick chalk ash and even burnt bread. Not exactly minty, not exactly safe, and certainly not daily. Dental hygiene was a horror show. Rotten teeth were a status symbol among older nobles, and blackened smiles were almost expected. Sugar was expensive. Cavities proved you could afford it. The poor, ironically, had better teeth not from brushing, but from never tasting sweets. If a tooth went bad, you yanked it. Or more likely had someone yank it for you in a town square with a rusty tool and no anesthetic. You'd scream, bleed, maybe faint. And infection. A silent killer. Even wigs, the towering white clouds of hair you associate with powdered courts and elegant salons, were part of the grimy picture. Human hair, goat hair, horse hair, they all found their way into wig construction. And once powdered and placed, those wigs became home to lice, fleas, and worse. Men stored bacon fat inside to style them. Women sewed pads of cloth to hold the shape, which soaked up sweat oil and perfume until they turned into little sponges of rot. Some wigs weren't taken off for days, even weeks. The scalp beneath was often inflamed, riddled with sores, or crawling with life. You pass a young revolutionary on the street, bare-headed hair, unpowdered, deliberately disheveled. He spits near your feet. The act is loud, wet, and unapologetic. That spit carries more than disdain. It carries phlegm, maybe disease, maybe 1,000 invisible threats. But he doesn't care. His hygiene is political. He wants to look like the people, smell like the people, be the people. To him, the powdered aristocrats aren't just out of touch, they're unclean inside and out. You pause near the Seine. The water glinting silver under a gray sky looks peaceful, but it's deceptive. The river is filth. Human waste animal carcasses, dye runoff from tanneries, blood from slaughterhouses, all swirl together in its depths. And yet people still wash here. They dunk clothes. They scrub their feet. Some even drink from it. They have no choice. Water from wells isn't always better. Some are tainted, others dry. Clean water is a fantasy. Boiling it helps if you can afford firewood, but most don't. The laundresses, those weathered women hunched over baskets, work along the banks in every season. their hands red and cracked from icy water, their backs bent. They beat sheets with wooden paddles, hang clothes across bridges, rinse garments until the dye runs out. The laundry smells better when it dries in the wind. But how long does it stay clean in this city? A day, maybe two, before it's back in the grime, soaked with sweat and perfumed with piss. In public bathhouses, when they existed, you'd find another hierarchy. Men and women segregated, of course. But the poor were sometimes allowed in for a small fee. Inside steam choked the air, mixing with human breath and the sharp tang of soap, or what passed for soap. The baths were rarely cleaned. You sat in lukewarm water that had already seen 6, maybe 10 bodies. Still, it was better than nothing. You scrubbed with rough cloth, maybe a rock. If you were lucky, someone offered hot water. If not, you left damp, semi-clean, and still itchy. Children were the invisible casualties in this age of neglect. Their hygiene wasn't a priority. Swaddled for weeks at a time, barely changed, crawling with rashes and lice. They played in the streets, barefoot, hands sticky from handling rotting fruit or animal entrails. Illness spread quickly, typhoid, dysentery, tuberculosis, and no one understood how. Bad air, they said. So they lit incense, swung herbs in satchels, and prayed. But nothing really stopped the sickness. You see a nursemaid wipe a baby's face with a piece of linen already streaked brown. She shushes the child, but there's no soap, no clean cloth, no sanitizer. Just habits passed down through generations. And as you follow her into the shadows of a dark hallway, the floor creaks beneath your feet. Dust hangs thick in the air, catching in your throat. The windows are sealed, curtains drawn. Ventilation wasn't considered healthy. Drafts were dangerous. Rooms were kept shut tight. Smells had nowhere to go. And that's the rhythm of it. Dirt, odor, superstition, repeat. Hygiene in revolutionary France wasn't just a daily inconvenience. It was a battlefield. A negotiation between tradition and poverty. Medicine and myth, appearance and survival. You begin to realize that the revolution didn't clean up France, it exposed its underbelly. And as heads rolled in the public square, no one stopped to notice the rot already setting in beneath their feet. But that's only the street level. Wait until you see what was happening in the hospitals. You follow the trail of the sick. The coughing grows louder, the scent sharper, metallic damp, heavy with the unmistakable tang of blood and decay. You're at the gates of the Hôtel Dieu Paris's most prominent hospital during the French Revolution. Its walls loom large along the Seine, shadowed by the soaring towers of Notre Dame. But don't let the grandeur fool you. Inside there is no antiseptic, no order, no comfort, only suffering concentrated like smoke in the air. As you step through the doors, the first thing that hits you is the heat. It's not warm outside, but in here, the body heat of hundreds of patients and caretakers suffocates the room. The smell is immediate and unforgettable. Sweat, urine, vomit, open wounds, death, all of it mingling in a heady, eye-watering cocktail. You try not to breathe deeply, but it's impossible. The air crawls into your nostrils and sticks to your skin. You can taste the sickness. Rows of beds, no, not beds, more like shared platforms line the walls. Patients lie shoulder to shoulder, some pressed together, others barely covered by soiled sheets. You pass a cot with 2 women on it, one asleep and the other moaning quietly, her face twisted with fever. Next to her, a man has died hours ago. No one's moved his body yet. There's no space to move it to. The dead and the living share quarters, share blankets, sometimes even share breaths. And this isn't an accident. This is the norm. Hygiene in hospitals during the French Revolution was based on a limited, dangerously flawed understanding of illness. Germ theory. A century away, infection control unheard of. Doctors didn't wash their hands between surgeries, if you could even call them surgeries. Tools were reused without cleaning, and amputations were performed on wooden tables slick with the blood of the last patient. You see a surgeon now, sleeves rolled up, blade in hand. He's sawing through a young man's leg, which is blackened with gangrene. The patient is conscious. There is no anesthesia. He's biting a leather strap, screaming into it, veins bulging as the saw rips through bone. Blood splashes across the surgeon's apron, already stiff with dried stains. When the job is done, the stump is cauterized with a red-hot iron. The smell of seared flesh rises in a thick plume, mingling with the sounds of retching from a nearby cot. The floor is never truly clean. Straw is sometimes laid down to absorb fluids, but it only holds so much. After a few hours, it's a wet, pulpy mat of bodily waste. Rats scurry between the beds, nibbling on crumbs, sometimes biting patients who are too weak to shoo them away. Lice crawl freely. Bedbugs thrive. Infection spreads like wildfire, but no one knows why. They blame the stars, the air, moral failings, bad luck. Nurses, mostly nuns or volunteers, move between the rows, their faces covered with scarves soaked in vinegar. They believe it wards off illness. They pray over the dying and mop the brow of the fevered, but they don't wash their hands either. Their robes are streaked with every bodily fluid you can imagine. And they do this day after day, year after year. The miracle isn't that some patients survive. It's that these caretakers do. You're led to the surgical theater, if it can be called that. A raised platform with no seats, no lighting, save a few flickering oil lamps. Students crowd around their faces, flushed with curiosity and nausea. They watch as a surgeon removes a tumor with a knife that looks more like a butcher's cleaver. The room is hushed, save for the patient's breathing, the occasional groan, and the wet sounds of cutting. No one takes notes. No one questions technique. Medicine is part tradition, part performance, and entirely guesswork. The instruments lie in a tray nearby. They are rusted. Some are cracked. All are used. There is no disinfectant. Maybe a quick rinse in cold water, if that. They've been used on infections, abscesses, even autopsies. And yet here they are again inside another body. The patient survives the procedure, but you know what's coming. Within days, maybe hours, his fever will rise. His wound will fester. The stench will return. And he'll be back in the crowded row, groaning alongside the others, waiting for death to roll over him like a tide. What about childbirth? That too happens here. A woman screams from a corner of the hall, her legs spread over a blood-stained sheet. There is no privacy, no sanitation. The midwife or the nearest available nun kneels between her legs, hands unwashed from the last delivery. The baby emerges into a world of filth, gasping its first breath in an airless room choked with death. If it survives the week, it will be luck. If the mother lives, it will be a miracle. Childbed fever kills more women than almost anything else. It's an infection, though they don't know the word. They call it a womb curse or a bad wind. It spreads because no one cleans the tools, no one washes their hands and blood coats every surface. Some women bleed out within hours. Others linger in agony, burning with fever until their bodies give up. You walk past a priest giving last rites to a boy who can't be older than 10. He's gaunt, sunken-eyed flies buzzing around his lips. His fevered breaths rattle through a chest that sounds hollow. No one expects him to make it. But there are no clean sheets to offer, no soothing baths, no fresh air. Only prayers and vinegar rags. You wonder how long he's been lying there. Days, weeks. Time means little here. It's always dusk in this place, inside and out. Some patients aren't even sick when they arrive. They're homeless, hungry, or injured in street brawls or protests. But the moment they enter the Hôtel Dieu, their odds plummet. 1 in 4 die. Not because of what they came in with, but because of what they catch while here. It's the price of survival in revolutionary France. You might escape the guillotine, but you probably won't escape the hospital. And outside the gates, the line of the desperate grows. Ragged people with festering wounds, families carrying unconscious loved ones, women clutching children who haven't stirred in days. There's no space, no supplies, no system, just triage by despair. The luckiest get a cot. The rest collapse in the streets and hope someone notices. You step back from the doorway, trying to collect yourself. But there is no relief outside. Paris in the Revolution is a city cracking open, spilling all its secrets. The streets are fouled, the homes are teeming, and even its places of healing are cathedrals of suffering. You now understand hygiene isn't just about smell or comfort. In this world, it's a matter of life and death always seems to be winning. But beyond the hospitals, there's another layer of rot, one hidden behind the velvet curtains of private homes, where revolutionaries and aristocrats alike cling to outdated rituals and dangerous beliefs. It's time to peek inside. The Hôtel Dieu fades behind you, but the memories linger like a scent clinging to your clothes. You cross the Pont au Change, the river gliding slowly beneath your feet, as if unaware of the city's suffering. But as you move deeper into the residential districts, past the market stalls, and soldiers posted at intersections, you begin to notice a strange contradiction. Paris, for all its blood and grime, still tries to look beautiful. And behind these weathered facades lie apartments filled with elegance, at least on the surface. You step into a wealthy home, perhaps belonging to a banker or a high-ranking revolutionary official. The foyer is polished stone. The staircase curves like ribbon, and paintings line the walls depicting gods, gardens, and powdered courtly life. The woman who greets you is immaculate, her silhouette framed by candlelight, her dress pulled tight at the waist, her neckline scandalously low. But behind the rouge and flour-dusted wig, you detected again the musty, heavy perfume of rot. It's not her fault. She follows the hygiene customs of her class, ritualized, meticulous, and utterly ineffective. A servant brings in a bowl of water and a square of cloth. The lady dips the cloth into the basin, dabs her face, her neck, and beneath her arms. No soap, just water infused with lavender or orange blossom. It's what they call a toilette, a delicate act of cosmetic maintenance that stands in for actual bathing. The water is not changed between uses. It might be warmed, but it's often just reused from day to day. The same cloth might see several faces before being replaced. It's believed that to scrub the skin too much would disturb the body's balance, letting illness creep in through the pores. So instead, she applies more powder to her face, rose-tinted salve to her lips, a touch of wax to tame her eyebrows. And then the perfume. Always the perfume. Rosewater, jasmine, ambergris. Enough to make your eyes water. Enough to cover almost anything. In the next room, a valet tends to her husband, whose morning ritual is just as perfumed and powdered. His wig is lifted from a mannequin's head, brushed out with a mixture of talc and stale flour, and then fixed into place with animal fat pomade, thick, sticky, and crawling with mites. He scrapes his cheeks with a dull razor, wipes his hands on a lace-trimmed towel, and then dabs a tincture onto his chest, claiming it keeps away plague. The towel has never been washed. Their bedroom is grand, but stifling. Heavy drapes block all light. The windows remain closed to keep the bad air out. The chamber pot sits beneath the bed, half full, waiting for the servants' evening rounds. The sheets haven't been changed in weeks, maybe longer. The mattress is stuffed with straw, damp in places, and the pillowcases smell faintly of mildew. And yet this is high society. This is how the well-born live. You're guided to the children's nursery where two little boys wrestle over a wooden toy. Their faces are flushed, their necks streaked with grime, and their fingernails blackened from hours spent indoors crawling across unswept floors. A nursemaid sits nearby, more interested in gossip than hygiene. She wipes a nose with her sleeve, slaps a hand away from the chamber pot, and offers a bite of bread that's already fallen to the floor. When the children complain of rashes or itchiness, she dusts them with more powder. Bathing is reserved for special occasions. Birthdays, name days, illness. And even then, it's not a full soak. They're placed in shallow tubs, water poured gently from a jug, while someone rubs lavender oil onto their scalp. No scrubbing, no soap, just fragrance and ceremony. The truth is daily bathing, or even weekly bathing, was considered eccentric, almost vulgar. It was something soldiers and peasants did when forced to march through rain or swim through mud. The idea of immersing the whole body in water was tied to scandalous behavior. Bathhouses, once common in medieval times, had been shuttered centuries earlier because they were associated with sex sin and syphilis. Water was morally suspect. Purity came from appearance, not from actual cleanliness. In another room, you find a closet-sized space known as the cabinet d'aisance, a private toilet of sorts, a wooden bench with a hole, a bowl beneath, and a curtain for privacy. The waste is collected at the end of the day by a servant who, if the household is lucky, will carry it to a cesspit or dump it into the nearby alley. If not, it joins the pile in the courtyard, where other tenants throw theirs. The stench rises with the sun. Some wealthier homes employ what they call night soil men, workers, who collect excrement from multiple homes, cart it through the streets at night, and dump it in designated fields outside the city. But many avoid the expense. And many of those fields are already overflowing. And what of the kitchens? You might assume, at least here, the standards would be higher. But you'd be wrong. The cook works by candlelight in a windowless room, chopping meat on a board that's never been scrubbed. The knife is slick with grease. The bucket of water nearby is cloudy, used and reused until it smells sour. Rats are common. So are cockroaches. Bread is sliced with the same hands that just gutted a goose. And refrigeration, a fantasy. Meat is salted, dried, or smoked. Milk goes sour in hours. Vegetables are rinsed, if at all, with water hauled in from the same source used for laundry. And yet the meals are elaborate. 5, 6 courses. Silver platters and porcelain bowls, dishes with names you can't pronounce. But beneath every elegant bite is the risk of contamination. You wonder how many of the dinner guests will suffer diarrhea tonight, or worse. In this home, as in so many across Paris, the illusion of refinement masks the rot. Silk hides the sores. Perfume clouds the truth. The revolution may have toppled a monarchy, but it did little to change these rituals. Whether loyalist or Jacobin, rich or rising, the rules of hygiene remain tragically the same. And for those who couldn't afford a servant or a private closet, the alternative was public latrines, rarely cleaned, often vandalized, and barely functional. Or worse, nothing at all. You simply chose an alleyway, a doorstep, a stairwell, and hoped no one noticed or cared. You walk back into the grand hallway. A maid passes you clutching a chamber pot with both hands. It sloshes as she moves and she wrinkles her nose. Not from disgust, but from exhaustion. She's carried hundreds like it. In this world, waste is just another chore. And then you realize something deeper. The decay isn't just physical, it's psychological. It's embedded in how people live, how they see the body, how they think about illness, death, and propriety. Cleanliness isn't a habit, it's a costume. A mask they wear for one another. Behind it, everyone's skin itches, their breath stinks, their scalps crawl, but they smile, they bow, they toast the Republic, or the King, or whoever's in power this week. And now, as you step out of that house, the sounds of the city swell around you again. The clatter of carts, the gossip in the cafes, the toll of distant bells. Paris moves on not because it's clean or healed, but because it must. Yet you know there's still one more layer of this world to uncover. The poor didn't have silk or servants. They didn't have perfume or private pots. And their version of hygiene. That was something else entirely. Something more raw. Something more survival. Let's go there next. The polished door clicks shut behind you, and instantly the air shifts. The perfume, though cloying, is gone. Now it's just Paris again, gritty, pungent, restless. You head east toward the Faubourg Saint-Antoine, where the buildings lean inward and the streets narrow into twisting veins of humanity. This is where the revolution first gained traction. This is where the cobblers, smiths, seamstresses, and butchers live elbow to elbow. And this is where hygiene becomes not an option, but a daily gamble. The stink here is different than the grand boulevards. It's denser, older. A layered musk of unwashed bodies, scorched oil, spoiled vegetables, and chamber pot residue. Laundry lines stretch from window to window, sagging under the weight of stained shirts and threadbare underclothes. Below them, barefoot children splash through puddles that shimmer with questionable colors, while dogs and rats scavenge the same scraps of waste behind the grocer's stall. You enter a tenement 4 stories tall, crumbling dark even at midday. The stairwell is steep and slick worn by thousands of feet, and rarely cleaned. It smells of cabbage mildew and wet stone. A woman hurries past you, a pail of water sloshing at her side. Her skirt brushes your leg, leaving a streak of something damp. She doesn't notice. She's used to it. This is just another day. Inside one of the flats, there's barely room to stand. A bed, a stool, a crate with cracked crockery. A pot in the corner. No sink, no tap, no drain. The family that lives here, a mother, a father, 3 children, fetches water daily from a nearby pump. That water isn't guaranteed clean. Often it's cloudy, sometimes it smells faintly of sewage. Still, they use it for everything: drinking, cooking, wiping down sores, rinsing out rags. Boiling water costs firewood, and firewood is expensive. Bathing, that happens only when desperation demands it. Maybe someone falls into a canal. Maybe someone begins to itch so badly they fear infestation. Then a tub is filled if they have one. More often, a child is scrubbed in a wash tub used the day before for laundry, and the water is reused for the next person. No soap, just rags and fingernails and hard red hands. In this flat, clothing is rarely laundered. A shirt might last a month before washing. Woolens are brushed down, not scrubbed. Stains are part of the fabric now. The smell of sweat, cooked onions, and must hangs in the air like a low ceiling. You notice a basket in the corner, half full of rags, stiff with old blood and mucus. Someone's been sick. Maybe they still are. And yet people live here with a strange resilience. A mother braids her daughter's hair, picking out nits as she works. A father scrapes his fingernails with a knife. A boy rubs his feet with ash to dry the sores from damp boots. These are survival habits, instinctual, passed down. They don't call it hygiene, but it is, of a kind. You exit onto a different street, more crowded now, with vendors lining both sides. A fishmonger slices his wares atop a barrel buzzing with flies. Blood and scales coat the wooden plank. There's no rinse between cuts. Next to him, a butcher hacks meat into chunks, tossing bones to the gutter. A dog licks the stone. A barefoot man walks through the same spot, moments later, oblivious. Nearby, a public fountain trickles. It's supposed to be a source of drinking water, but a woman is already washing out a diaper in the basin. Another is rinsing a chicken carcass. The water flows slowly, barely enough to push the soapy scum down the channel. A child cups his hands to drink from it anyway. No one stops him. These scenes aren't exceptional. They're normal. The idea of personal space, of sanitized environments, of private hygiene rituals, those belong to another class, another world. Here, cleanliness is communal. Everyone sees everything, and no one is surprised. You pass a barbier des pauvres, a street barber catering to the poor. He has a wooden stool, a dull blade, and a bucket of tepid water. His customers line up for a shave or a quick haircut. The blade is wiped on a cloth between uses. The water is not changed. His hands are calloused and black at the fingertips. But he works with care. To the people here, grooming is a form of pride. Even if it's filthy, even if it's risky, it's still a way to hold on to humanity. And humanity matters. Because when the revolution burns through your neighborhood, when food prices soar, when jobs vanish overnight, and when the guillotine becomes a centerpiece of public life, dignity is often all you have left. You watch a woman sweep her stoop with a branch broom. The dust swirls up and clings to the laundry above her. But she keeps sweeping. A boy empties a chamber pot into the alley, splashing his own ankles. He shrugs. Life moves on. One building down, an elderly man crouches outside his door, plucking fleas from his shirt. He holds one up to the light before crushing it between his thumbnails. He winces either from the itch or the shame. But again, no one looks twice. You're the only one staring. And then there are the smells, ever-present, ever-shifting. A puff of yeast and scorched bread from a nearby bakery. A waft of boiled cabbage. The heavy aroma of sweat from a passing crowd. It's all around you, never receding. In this part of Paris, the air clings. You notice a small group gathered at the base of a crumbling wall. Someone's hung up herbs, lavender, thyme, sage, not for seasoning, for masking. They believe the scent will protect them, that it will cleanse the air, chase away the sickness. Maybe it's wishful thinking. Maybe it works. Either way, it smells better than the gutters. At the corner, you find a lavatory, a public one, though it hardly deserves the name. It's a shed with slats for walls, a pit dug into the earth, a swarm of flies humming just inside the door. It reeks. So badly you step back instinctively. But people still use it. Because the alternative is the street. And everyone here has learned that dignity, however thin, is worth the stench. And yet, for all the filth, the grime, the rot, you begin to notice something else. A strange kind of order. Not of cleanliness, but of pattern. The same broom at the same hour. The same washing at the same pump. The same whispered prayers while cleaning a child's feet. These aren't acts of ignorance. They're acts of endurance. This isn't a city where people don't care. It's a city where people are overwhelmed. Outnumbered by the rats, outpaced by the disease, unsupported by any public sanitation plan. The revolution didn't come with garbage men or sewer reforms. It came with slogans and steel. The rest, that was left to the people. And the people did what they could. They shared buckets. They shared towels. They shared remedies passed down in whispers, vinegar for fevers, urine for wounds, mud for rashes. They tried. Even as their streets flooded with filth, even as the world changed around them, they tried to stay human. But now the dusk is coming. Candles flicker in windows. Chamber pots fill again. The water pumps slow to a trickle. And the city prepares to sleep, not peacefully, not quietly, but deeply. You wonder how anyone manages it, in this much filth, with this much chaos, with so little hope. But somehow they do. Tomorrow will be the same, or worse. But tonight they rest. And as the moon rises over rooftops streaked with soot, you know you haven't seen it all yet. There's still one more world to descend into. The prisons, the workhouses, the asylums, places where hygiene isn't just ignored, it's obliterated. You ready yourself? It's about to get darker. The light of the moon is pale now, the kind that casts no comfort. You make your way through winding alleys toward a district the rest of Paris prefers not to speak of, the places behind locked gates and guarded doors. The prisons, the workhouses, the asylums. These are not simply institutions, they're warehouses for societies unwanted. And in the shadow of the revolution, they're fuller than ever. You approach La Salpêtrière, the infamous asylum originally built as a gunpowder factory, and later turned into a hospital for the poor, the mad, and the female undesirables. It's a fortress of stone and silence surrounded by high walls and the eerie quiet of abandonment, though you know full well it's teeming inside. The guards at the gate barely glance as you slip through. What would you steal here? Nothing of value exists. The first thing you notice is the cold. The stone walls trap it, and it sinks into your bones. The air is damp, not with the freshness of rain, but with the rot of bodies long confined. The smell is a muted scream, urine-sour sweat, something metallic like blood, something earthy like mold. You step carefully, the floor beneath you, uneven, patched with straw, and God knows what else. Rows of cots line the central hall. Women lie huddled together, some rocking, some moaning, some staring at nothing. Many of them are here not because they're ill, but because they were inconvenient widows without means, daughters without dowries, wives who spoke too loudly. And now they are stripped of everything: names, clothes, dignity. Their hair is often shorn to prevent lice. Their gowns, if you can call them that, are coarse and ragged, unchanged for weeks. They sleep in them, bleed in them, die in them. There's no plumbing. Buckets serve as toilets, and they're rarely emptied. The waste seeps into the straw, into the stone, into the skin. You see one woman scratching at a sore on her arm. Her nails are caked with filth. There's no soap, no clean cloth, no medicine that works. Only vinegar, spit, and prayer. In the corner, a nurse, really just a woman too old or too broken to do anything else, rubs a young girl's back with her palm. The girl is feverish, her lips cracked, her hair matted. The nurse sings softly in a language you don't recognize. Maybe it's a lullaby. Maybe it's a spell. It doesn't matter. Nothing here heals. Not really. And yet this is one of the better institutions. Across the city, the conciergerie prison waits like a maw of death. You make your way there next, walking with heavy steps along the banks of the Seine, passing fishermen asleep in their boats, their lines dangling uselessly in the dark. When you reach the thick walls of the prison, it feels like the temperature drops another degree. Inside, the air is thicker, somehow worse, more final. Here the prisoners await trial or execution, or both. The cells are cramped, often shared by 6 or 7 bodies. They sit shoulder to shoulder, knees to chests, pressed in so tightly that the warmth of one another's filth becomes their only comfort. There's no separation between sleep and waste. Buckets overflow. Vermin run freely. Sometimes the prisoners sleep with their backs against the wall just to keep the rats from crawling across their faces. A woman sits near the iron-barred door. She stares at you, not with hope or fear, but with the blankness of someone who's already buried herself inside. Her dress is stained dark around the hem. You realize she's menstruating. No cloth, no care. Just the slow, steady leak of dignity. Another man coughs so violently, he spits blood into the straw. It disappears almost instantly into the layers of filth. No one turns to look. They've all done it too. The guards are indifferent. They drink and joke and toss scraps into cells like bones to dogs. Hygiene. It's not even on the list of priorities. You survive if your body is stubborn, if your immune system holds, if you don't pick at your wounds or your lice bites or your scabs. Most don't make it that long. And if you do reach trial, you'll be shaved, your head scraped bare with a blade used on the last dozen prisoners. No rinse, no sanitation, just a sharp edge and a fast hand. A woman clutches her hair as it's yanked back. Her scalp bleeds. A boy cries as they nick his ear. The hair is burned afterward as if that could cleanse the shame. Further down the corridor, you find the isolation cells. Damp, dark, windowless. Just a hole in the ground for waste. Some prisoners are forgotten here literally. Their names never called, their rations forgotten. They starve, surrounded by their own rot, until the door opens again weeks later to a smell that cannot be described, only endured. And in the workhouses, the story's not different. Families torn apart, children made orphans by a change in regime or a rumor in the street, all packed into massive halls with little light, less ventilation, and zero concern for sanitation. You walk into one and it's chaos. The coughing, the shouting, the clatter of tin bowls against stone. The water here is scarce. When it arrives, it's already fouled. Washing is rare and usually done en masse, one bucket, dozens of bodies. Hands, faces, wounds, all dipped into the same murky basin. The latrines are wooden benches with holes. Below a pit, no cover, no privacy, no schedule. You go when you must, and you hold your breath as long as you can. The stink creeps up your legs and into your soul. One boy sits quietly in a corner cradling something in his lap. A doll, maybe. Or just a rag he's pretending is a doll. His cheeks are streaked with soot. His teeth are rotting. He's too thin. You want to reach out to him. Offer him a clean cloth, a bath, anything. But there's nothing here to offer. Only silence. Only more of the same. As you step back out into the night, you finally understand. These aren't institutions for rehabilitation. They're slow-motion coffins. And hygiene, if it was ever a concern, is now just another casualty of revolution, poverty, and indifference. The city exhales around you. Paris is asleep, but never still. The gutters gurgle softly. Somewhere a dog barks. A man shouts in his sleep. And above it all, the night presses down with the weight of history. But even in this world of filth and disease, there were those who resisted. Not with weapons, but with soap vinegar brushes and reform. Small voices, quiet efforts, but determined. Next, we walk with them, the dreamers, the cleaners, the ones who tried to scrub Paris clean even as it bled. The dawn breaks faintly over the spires of Paris, casting a gray glow through the haze. You walk now not among the sick or imprisoned, but with those who try desperately, sometimes naively, to resist the tide of rot. The dreamers, the reformers, the believers in soap and structure. You might think they'd be hailed as heroes, but in this city, they were often mocked, ignored, or drowned out by the din of revolution. You begin on the left bank where the thinkers lived. Among dusty bookshops and smoky salons, a few brave voices dared to propose that hygiene might not just be a matter of luxury, but of public health, though the term itself didn't yet exist. You pass a door, its plaque bearing the name of a now-forgotten physician. He wrote pamphlets not on anatomy but on cleanliness. He insisted that unwashed hands spread disease. That bad air wasn't the cause but the symptom. He was laughed at. Too much wine, they said. Too many theories. Still he persisted. He walked through the streets with a vinegar-soaked rag over his mouth, dipping his hands in lime water between patients. He published essays about latrine placement, about boiling cloth before reuse. Some of his patients lived. He couldn't prove why. No one believed him. But the survivors remembered. You turn down a quieter lane now, following the scent of lavender and soap. It leads you to one of the small soap makers' workshops, rare but real. Inside, a woman stirs a pot over a fire. The mixture bubbles fat and lye and something else. She pours it into wooden molds carefully. Her fingers are calloused, her nails clean. She sells to those who can afford it. A sliver at a time. A bar might last a month. Soap is still considered a vanity item by many. But this woman knows better. She washes her tools. She wears an apron she rinses every night. Her shop smells miraculously of something fresh. It's the only building on the street that doesn't stink. Next door, a washerwoman sings as she beats linen with a wooden paddle. Her arms are strong. Her bucket is full of cloudy river water, but she has a system. Soak, beat, rinse, hang. She uses ash sometimes or stale urine to bleach the whites. She doesn't like it, but it works. The smell lingers through ammonia and sweat. Still, it's better than nothing. She tells you softly that she always double rinses the cloth used for babies. Always. Her mother taught her that. Even if the water is scarce, even if she has to fetch it herself, she believes it keeps them safe. Maybe it does. Maybe that tiny act of care saves more lives than the politicians. You wander on toward a small convent tucked behind a crumbling wall. Inside, the sisters are scrubbing the floors, not for show, but for real. They boil their cloths, use vinegar in the corners, open windows to let the air in. Their patients, the poor, the dying, the forgotten, lie in cots with linen sheets that are actually changed. It's not perfect, but it's something. A young nun leads you through the hall. Her hands are red from scrubbing. Her voice is gentle. She believes in cleanliness as a form of mercy, that to wash the body is to acknowledge its worth. You pass a girl with typhus, her face gaunt, her breath shallow. The sheets beneath her are fresh. Someone washed her hair yesterday. A ribbon ties it back now. She may still die, but she will not die in filth. In another part of the city, a group of young women gather at the edge of a courtyard. They're part of a small guild, self-appointed guardians of public health. They wear kerchiefs, carry brooms, and keep track of which fountains run dry. They collect soap ends, distribute clean rags to mothers, remind neighbors to boil their water when fever strikes. It's not official work. There's no salary. Just a quiet rebellion against decay. One of them explains that when the revolution began, she thought it would bring sanitation, real systems, clean water waste removal. Instead, it brought blood in the streets and overflowing gutters. So they made their own revolution. In back alleys, in shared kitchens, in whispers. You enter a school now modest, one room filled with boys who stink of sweat and soot. But their teacher insists on order. He begins every day with a wash, a rag, a bucket, a line of boys who groan but obey. He teaches them letters, yes, but also how to scrape their nails, how to rinse a wound, how to recognize a fever. They don't understand why. But years later, maybe they'll remember. In some homes, especially among the old rural habits, linger herbs boiled into tonic baths, woolens hung in the wind, feet washed nightly. These aren't luxuries. They're survival skills. Grandmothers teach their granddaughters how to steep rosemary for scalp itches, how to dry orange peel for perfume, how to clean a chamber pot with lime and ash. These rituals are fading. Modern medicine hasn't yet replaced them, but they persist. And beneath the layers of dirt and despair, they hint at a people not resigned to rot, but resisting it in small, quiet ways. Even among soldiers, you hear of one regiment where the captain orders a washing line before every campaign. Not out of mercy, but pragmatism. Fewer lice means fewer sick days, he says. His men grumble, but they obey, and they march cleaner than most. And then there are the whispers of something new, a theory spreading through the salons and back rooms. That disease might come from invisible particles. That washing hands, washing everything might actually stop illness. It's laughed off now. but it lingers in the mind, like the scent of lavender in a dirty room, a possibility. You step out of the convent again, and the sunlight now cuts sharper. Paris is waking. The carts are rolling. The chamber pots are flying. But you've seen the resistance. Not loud. Not grand. Just steady. A bar of soap, a bowl of vinegar, a brush, a ribbon, a song. They don't change the world overnight. But maybe, just maybe, they stop one child from dying. One woman from itching. One man from festering in a cell. And that in a city this unclean is a revolution all its own. But you wonder now, what about Versailles, the palace of powdered wigs and gold fountains? Surely things were better there. Or were they worse than anyone dared admit? Let's find out. You leave the city behind. The clamor of the marketplaces, the stink of the alleyways, the churn of revolution all fade into the background as you move toward Versailles. The road is smoother here, flanked by carefully trimmed trees. You can almost pretend for a moment that the chaos of Paris was a bad dream. Almost. Then the palace appears. It stretches across the horizon like a mirage, gleaming gold gates, a sea of windows, rooftops, adorned with ornate sculptures, all nestled beneath the soft dawn sky. Versailles, the crown jewel of royal France, the center of absolute power before the Revolution, the stage upon which Louis XIV all performed their roles as kings of opulence. But as you step closer, your nose twitches. Beneath the grandeur, there's something else. A smell. It's faint but sour. And you know now luxury has its own kind of filth. You walk past the gilded gates and through the echoing courtyards. Inside the ceilings soar, the mirrors gleam, the chandeliers glitter. But the floors tell a different story. Streaks, smudges, crusted corners. The palace was too vast to clean properly, and there were no flush toilets, no modern plumbing, no underground sewer system, and the thousands of courtiers who lived, ate, drank, and schemed here. They still had to relieve themselves somewhere. You find one of the royal privies, an alcove tucked behind a velvet curtain. It looks private, elegant even. But what sits behind the curtain is just a wooden bench with a hole. Below it, a chamber pot. If it's full, someone will fetch a servant. Eventually. But often no one does, especially at night. Servants may be asleep or tending someone of higher rank, and so the waste accumulates. Slowly, quietly, horribly. In some wings there weren't even chamber pots. People used corners, stairwells, behind curtains. The famous Hall of Mirrors. It glowed with sunlight during the day, but at night it stank of urine. Servants were known to relieve themselves in the fireplaces. Nobles, too. And in the gardens, the neatly trimmed hedges were a favorite spot for courtiers who didn't want to walk all the way back inside. You pass a maid with a copper pail balanced on her hip. She's moving briskly. You follow her into a servant's hallway where the illusion collapses completely. The walls here are scuffed. The air is thick with mildew. The servants' quarters, barely more than closets, smell of damp straw and unwashed bodies. They sleep in shifts, stacked like spoons, rarely changing clothes, sharing blankets that haven't seen soap in months. And they're the ones expected to keep the nobles clean. Or at least looking clean. You step into a dressing room, the domain of the valet de chambre. The tools of the trade line. The table wigs dusted with powder cloths soaked in rosewater sponges for dabbing armpits. Tinctures for whitening the skin. No soap. No water basin large enough for a real wash. A nobleman rises from his chair, arms spread, as his valet wipes him down with a perfumed cloth. The same cloth used the day before. Maybe the day before that too. His linen underclothes are swapped out. That's the trick. They believe the linen absorbs impurities. So they wear it close to the skin and change it often, daily even. But the skin beneath that remains untouched. Wiping and dabbing have replaced washing. A clean shirt means a clean body, or so the court believes. And it's not just the men. A noblewoman prepares for a ball, her maid brushing powder into her hair, pinning her curls with goose fat to hold their shape. Her gown is stitched so tightly she can't raise her arms, let alone reach to wash herself. She doesn't notice the lice in her wig, or maybe she does and just accepts it. When she lifts her skirts, you see the rash climbing up her thighs. Friction. Sweat. Never aired. Never cleaned. To mask it, she dabs on a bit of scent amber civet, something musky and sweet. Her breath smells faintly sour. The dentist pulled her molar last week, without anesthetic. Her gums are still bleeding. She swishes brandy and presses a silk cloth to her lip. Then she smiles. The king himself, whichever one you choose for, they all had similar habits, did not bathe regularly. Louis XIV famously claimed to have only bathed twice in his life, though that's likely exaggeration. But even when bathing did happen, it was ceremonial. A grand copper tub was brought into the room, filled with hot water and herbs, and the king would recline while servants hovered nearby with cloths and scents. Soap was rarely used. The skin was wiped, not scrubbed, not cleaned, and the water wasn't changed during the process. It grew cloudy, greasy, but he stayed in it. Then dried powder dressed in fresh linen and layers of velvet. Versailles had over 1,000 rooms. But do you know how many bathrooms? None. Not as we would define them. There were a few garderobes, small closets with wooden seats, but most of the waste disposal was informal. In the morning, servants made rounds emptying chamber pots and scrubbing stains from marble with vinegar and cloths. But they never reached every corner. Behind tapestries, beneath stairwells, under furniture, waste lingered. The gardens fared no better. Though exquisitely maintained in appearance, they were notorious for public urination and worse. During grand fêtes, guests might slip behind a hedge rather than navigate the palace's endless corridors. Servants forbidden from entering certain areas simply found the nearest shadow. And with thousands on the grounds, the stench built fast. In winter, the cold helped. But in summer, you can imagine. The sun baking the waste into stone. The flies, the steam rising from beneath the gravel. Courtiers fanning themselves, dabbing at their noses, pretending they didn't smell it. But they did. And yet Versailles remained the pinnacle of taste, of grace, of refinement. Foreign visitors were awestruck by its beauty, but even they whispered of the smell. One ambassador described it as a perfume of glory tinged with rot. Another compared the air to a bouquet of roses wilting beside an open sewer. And the irony. The palace had fountains, magnificent ones, dozens of them. Water shot into the air in perfect arcs. Gold statues sprayed mist across the parterres. But none of it was potable. You couldn't wash with it. You couldn't even drink it. It was decorative, just like everything else. So you leave Versailles behind, trailing your fingers along a marble banister, stained faintly yellow at its base. You walk back through the gardens, past the statues, past the fountains, past the peacocks and musicians and illusions. Because that's what it was, an illusion, all of it. The clean faces, the crisp linen, the scent of violets and civet and ambergris. Beneath it all, filth. But what happened when that illusion fell? When the people dragged the royals back to Paris and tore the veil away, hygiene didn't improve. If anything, it collapsed further. Next, you'll see what the revolutionaries tried to build and how badly it went. You return to Paris as the drums of revolution thunder louder in your ears. Versailles fades behind you like a distant fever dream replaced by the grinding, breathless machinery of radical change. The monarchy is gone, or at least imprisoned. The assembly debates endlessly. Heads are rolling daily. And beneath all this fury, beneath the slogans and tricolor banners, the people still stink. You stand now in the Place de la Révolution. The guillotine looms above the crowd. The scent here is sharper than ever. Sweat, fear, iron. The blood from yesterday's execution is still soaked into the wooden platform. They rinse it each morning, but never well enough. The smell lingers in the cracks. You hear a woman whisper that she's seen more blood here than in a butcher's shop. She's probably right. And what's more, the blood soaks into the street, runs into gutters, and mixes with the waste already there. No one cleans it properly. No one even tries anymore. Sanitation is a luxury the revolution doesn't have time for. And yet, amid the chaos, you can see the shape of an attempt, a messy, improvised attempt to remake hygiene itself. The Committee of Public Safety has bigger worries than soap. But certain revolutionaries, doctors, idealists, ex-monks begin to propose reforms. They argue that true liberty must come with public health, that the new republic cannot rise on filth, but they are drowned out by war, betrayal, famine, disease. Still some try. In 1793, there's a decree for the cleaning of streets. A new civic role is invented, Inspecteur de Salubrité, sanitation inspector. They're supposed to check wells, oversee cesspits, ensure that waste isn't simply tossed from windows. But these inspectors are few, often unpaid, and even more often ignored. You pass one now, a gaunt man with ink-stained hands and a tattered notebook. He's shouting at a woman for dumping a bucket into the street. She shrugs and slams her shutter. You watch him scribble something on his page. A warning, a record. But it doesn't matter. There's no real enforcement. The city is too big. The filth too constant. The revolution has changed who holds the broom, not whether the floor gets swept. You pass a public well. A sign has been posted. Boil before drinking. But the line is long, the day is hot, and people are thirsty. A woman fills her jug, takes a sip, wipes her mouth, and moves on. You hear coughing nearby. A child squats next to the basin, splashing his face. You know what's floating in that water. You can smell it. In some neighborhoods, attempts are made to build communal baths. You find one now, newly opened. A wooden shack, a fire roaring behind it, steam curling out of the roof vents. Inside, a long trough filled with tepid water. The air is moist and close. Half a dozen men sit naked in the water. None of them speak. One man dips a rag and wipes behind his ears. Another pours water down his back. No one uses soap. A young boy runs through the room with a bundle of clean towels fresh from a laundry pile that smells suspiciously like vinegar and lye. He hands them out. You notice his arms are covered in red patches, dermatitis, or some kind of reaction. He scratches without noticing. The bathhouse feels like a dream someone half-finished. No separate tubs, no drains. The same water used again and again. Still, it's an improvement over nothing. In another district, the revolution attempts something new. A hospital redesign. Inspired by Enlightenment principles, a few thinkers insist that cleanliness is moral, that sunlight and air can heal, that bodies must be treated with dignity. You visit a converted convent, now serving as a hospital. The windows are open. The beds are spaced farther apart. There's a room set aside for laundry, a huge copper basin for boiling cloth and racks for drying. The nurses, former nuns, move with practiced care. But even here, there are shortages. No fresh linen for the third day in a row. No soap. The doctor speaks passionately about purging the miasmas with ventilation, but he still uses the same scalpel from one patient to the next. He believes in bad air, not bacteria. And always outside these experiments, the streets grow worse. Paris's sewers, what little of them exist, are clogged. The tunnels built centuries earlier to carry rainwater and waste have crumbled or overflowed. You peek down a grate and gag. The smell is breathtaking. A tide of human and animal waste has risen to just below the street. The night soil men, the vidangeurs, still do their work. Barely. You find one slumped in an alley, his cart parked at an angle half full of its dark cargo. He looks up at you with red-rimmed eyes. His shirt is soaked through. His skin is streaked with ash vinegar and something worse. He mutters about his partner dying last week. Fever, or gas poisoning, or something they picked up in the pits. No one really knows. Yet these men are essential. Without them, Paris drowns. At the food markets, another effort takes shape. Inspectors begin regulating fish sales, meat storage. They insist that vendors sweep up entrails and keep barrels off the ground. But these rules are lightly enforced. You pass a stall where chickens hang in the sun, flies dancing across their skin. The butcher flicks a rag lazily, not to clean, just to chase the insects from view. The smell, you can taste it. And then there are the schools, overcrowded, underfunded, and crawling with lice. Revolution has opened the doors to more children, but not given them soap or rags. One teacher tells you they've begun inspecting students' heads. Those found with nights are sent home with vinegar-soaked cloths, but the cloths are reused. The vinegar is watered down. The lice return. Some of the wealthier citizens now fund their own clean water initiatives. A merchant you meet is installing a private cistern fed by a spring outside the city. He tells you the water from the Seine is killing his children. He offers you a drink from a jug and smiles. It tastes fresh, cold, clean. He's the exception. The rest of Paris drinks what it can, washes when it can, wipes when it can. No public system exists. The Republic has reinvented rights, reimagined politics, but ignored the pipes beneath its feet. Even in death, the filth remains. The cemeteries are full, overflowing. In Les Innocents, the bodies are stacked so thick the ground heaves. Some are exhumed and dumped in mass graves. Others are buried too shallow, their scent rising into nearby homes. Eventually, the city closes that cemetery, opens catacombs, moves bones at night by torchlight through tunnels damp and rank. But the damage is done. The air still carries their weight, and yet Parisians endure. The revolution is not hygienic. It is brutal, swift, raw. But the people are resilient. They spit into the wind. They boil vinegar. They tie herbs around their necks and hope. You leave the square now, stepping over a puddle that might be water or something else. The guillotine has finished its work for the morning. A man sweeps the platform. Another collects the basket. You wonder if he'll wash his hands. But next we turn to something intimate. Something everyone did no matter their class. Let's talk about how they cleaned their mouths or didn't. You wander now through a quieter quarter, away from the clamor of executions and the stink of alleyways, stepping instead into the everyday intimacy of people's mouths. Yes, mouths. The very breath of revolutionary France laced with onion rot and decades of neglect. Because if you thought the streets were foul, wait until you learn what lived between people's teeth. You enter a small apothecary. The shelves creak under bottles of oil, bundles of dried herbs, and jars filled with mysterious powders. In one corner, a cabinet labeled dentifrices contains powders for the teeth, though clean is a relative term here. One mixture is ground charcoal and salt. Another blends powdered oyster shell and clove. A third smells vaguely of sage and something acidic. You dip your finger in a pot and taste a pinch. It's gritty like sand and leaves your gums tingling with salt and bitterness. Not exactly minty. Toothpaste doesn't exist yet, not in the modern sense. Most people never brush. The rich occasionally rub these powders on their teeth using cloth or their fingers. The poor. They might rinse with wine or vinegar. Maybe chew on a sprig of rosemary. That's it. No floss. No brushes with bristles. No morning and evening rituals. Just occasional panicked scrubbing when a tooth starts to ache or stink. You pass into a small home where a grandmother chews on a twig. It's frayed at one end, turned into a makeshift brush. She explains that it's from a tree she doesn't know the name of, just that her mother used it, and her mother before her. She rubs it across her remaining teeth with a practiced rhythm, then rinses her mouth with lukewarm water from a cracked jug. Her gums are blackened, her teeth loose. But she's proud to still have some at all. Because in this time, a full set of teeth into middle age is a luxury. The norm is decay. Gums recede early. Enamel is stripped by coarse bread and hard roots. Sugar, though expensive, has done its quiet damage, especially among the wealthy. In portraits, nobles smile with their mouths closed for good reason. Blackened stumps were hidden behind pointed lips and powdered cheeks. You peek into a nobleman's chamber. He's seated at a mirrored desk, dabbing perfume at his wrists, preparing for a visit. Beside him is a silver toothpick, long, elegant, grotesque. He picks between his molars delicately, then wipes it on his handkerchief. There's blood on the cloth, but he doesn't flinch. A small price to pay. Toothpicks were common, some carved from bone, others made of silver or ivory status symbols as much as hygiene tools. The more intricate, the more admired. But they weren't sterilized, and often they did more harm than good, puncturing infected gums or pushing debris deeper into cavities. In the streets you pass a woman selling bundles of herbs. She offers you something to chew. To sweeten the breath, she says. Parsley. Mint. Sometimes licorice root. It helps briefly, but it masks rather than solves. Beneath the herbal perfume, the decay festers. Rotten teeth were extracted, of course, but not in clinics. No extractions happened in town squares on makeshift stages, often by traveling dentists more showman than surgeon. You witness one now, a man in a stained coat shouting to a gathering crowd. He lifts a tooth from a boy's mouth with exaggerated flair. The boy screams, blood pouring from his gums. The crowd cheers. The tooth is held up like a prize. The tools tarnished metal pliers, hooks, no anesthesia, no antiseptic, no training really, just a strong grip and fast reflexes. Infection inevitable. Many died days later, but it was still better than living with the pain. You meet a man who wears a full set of dentures. He smiles proudly, revealing a mouth of human teeth. Yes, human teeth. Pulled from corpses or bought from the desperate. A trade in teeth existed, and some even came from soldiers' bodies after battle. These were affixed with wires and animal glue. They stank. They shifted when you spoke. But they were better than nothing. A woman you pass has no teeth at all. Her cheeks are sunken, her jaw sharp. She eats soup, milk-soaked bread, mashed peas. Meat is too difficult. Fruit too dangerous. She tells you her teeth left one by one. First the pain, then the rot, then the silence. She remembers none of them being pulled, just falling out in her hand one morning. You sit briefly at a revolutionary cafe, one of the new ones that sprang up as the monarchy collapsed. You listen to two men argue about politics. Their breath is hot with garlic and wine. One sneezes mid-sentence, spraying spittle across the table. The other doesn't blink. Hygiene isn't the point of the conversation. Survival is. A doctor walks past you murmuring about la carie, tooth decay. He believes it comes from imbalance from humoral disorder. He prescribes purging bloodletting or a poultice of camphor and pigeon droppings. You stare as he hands this recipe to a patient with a jaw swollen like a melon. The patient nods solemnly, as if grateful. Mouthwash, when used, is a mix of brandy clove oil and sometimes myrrh. It burns going down. Occasionally you see someone gargle wine, then spit into the street. A priest does it before Mass. A child mimics him afterward. The wine smells sweet, but you know it does nothing. Dental hygiene, like everything else, is layered with class, with superstition, with politics. Clean breath might mean you're rich. Bleeding gums might mean you're a revolutionary. White teeth, suspicious. Powdered teeth, possibly treasonous. The line between luxury and excess is razor thin. Best to look a little rough, but not too much. Never too much. And then there's the truth. Beneath all of it, mouths were a source of shame. People rarely opened them wide, rarely kissed deeply, rarely laughed with abandon, because they knew what lay behind their lips. The stink, the rot, the ache that never left. And no one, rich or poor, escaped it entirely. As night falls again, you catch the scent of wood smoke and sour wine. A man nearby coughs, hawks up something wet and spits. The sound echoes. It lands near your boot. No one flinches. This was daily life, the silent war inside the mouth, a battlefield where few won. But tomorrow brings something new, a shift, a change in how people thought about dirt, not just around them, but on them, because bathing was about to make a slow, smelly comeback. Let's go there next. The next morning, you awaken to the muffled clang of a distant bell and the scent of boiling cabbage and burning tallow drifting in from a cracked window. But today something else wafts on the breeze, an unmistakable whiff of soap. Faint, fleeting, but it's there. And for the first time in days, you feel a flicker of something almost like hope. Bathing, long shunned in France as dangerous, decadent, or simply unnecessary, is beginning to return. Slowly, unevenly, like an idea half remembered from centuries past. You follow the scent through narrow streets until you reach a Baines Publix, a public bathhouse. Not Roman in grandeur, not even medieval in form. Just a squat stone building tucked behind a bakery, steam curling from its wooden slats. Inside it's dimly lit and oppressively warm. The air smells of wet wood sweat and soap, the cheap kind, made from lye and animal fat, with a sharp bite to the nose. You hear voices splashing, a woman scolding her child. There are no bathtubs here, no faucets. Just large communal basins, shallow troughs of water, heated by an iron stove in the corner. People undress awkwardly behind hanging cloths. Modesty still matters even in revolution. A woman lifts her skirts, steps into the water, and gasps. It's warmer than expected, but not clean. She kneels and rubs her arms with a square of coarse linen. No sponge. No soap, she's saving that for her face. One bar has to last a month. A man dips a tin cup into a barrel of warm water and pours it over his shoulders. He scrubs with a brush made of pig bristle, peeling dirt from skin that hasn't seen daylight in weeks. You can smell it as it lifts, sour, thick, layered like sediment. The water turns cloudy fast. A child shrieks as someone rinses her hair. She's squirming, but the mother grips tight. This is the only bath she'll get this week, maybe longer. And still they come. Because the bathhouse is gaining popularity even in its grimy form. Partly from necessity. Partly from a growing belief, half scientific, half instinctual, that clean skin means fewer fevers, fewer lice, fewer deaths. You step into a washing alcove, just a small stone nook, with a pail of cloth and a wooden bench. A woman sits nude, humming softly, scrubbing her feet. Her back is streaked with red marks from scratching. Her hair is pinned up and dusted with rice powder, but you can see the lice eggs near her scalp. She dips her cloth in vinegar and presses it to her skin. Keeps the rashes down, she mutters. A sign nearby warns bathers not to use soap in the shared pools. It clogs the drains, the owner says. He charges extra for private buckets. You notice a pile of discarded linens in the corner, stiff-yellowed, waiting for someone to haul them to the river for washing. No laundry service here. But there's something remarkable in this moment. These people, peasants, merchants, widows, revolutionaries, are washing together, tentatively, uneasily, but together. The bathhouse serves more than just hygiene. It's a kind of truce zone. You hear men debate the Constitution while rinsing their arms. Women gossip as they scrub their children. One man with a scar across his chest murmurs about the guillotine, his voice low, as he washes his feet in silence. The warm water loosens tongues and grime. Outside you pass a perfume stall. The vendor, a man in a faded blue waistcoat, is losing business. People think soap makes perfume unnecessary, he complains. They think bathing is enough. Fools. He sells flasks of jasmine civet violet, but fewer people are buying. Not because they don't want to smell sweet, but because at long last they want to actually be clean. In certain districts, washing clubs are forming, unofficial gatherings where neighbors take turns fetching water, heating it, setting up makeshift bathing stations in courtyards or alley corners. Someone brings soap, someone brings rags. They share stories as they scrub. It's crude, primitive, but real. You visit one such gathering in a back alley of the Faubourg du Temple. A woman has converted an old horse trough into a foot bath. Children line up giggling as their feet are washed. A teenage boy pours water over an old man's back. Someone passes around a brush with a broken handle. They're laughing, not gagging. It's a miracle. At the same time, a few wealthier homes begin to install permanent bathing fixtures. Not plumbing exactly, but rooms with stone basins and drain holes leading into rudimentary cesspits. One merchant has even paid to have a lead pipe carry water from a rooftop barrel into a marble basin. It's cold, but it's progress. You step inside one of these homes now where a revolutionary official is showing off his sanitation room. A maid fills the basin with buckets from the courtyard. The water is filtered through cheesecloth to catch the bugs. The official undresses behind a screen, washes standing up, and dries with a linen towel that smells faintly of rose. He believes cleanliness is patriotic. A clean citizen is a virtuous citizen, he says, toweling his chest. The monarchy was filth. We must be better. He says this without irony, though his feet are still black with grime from the street. Even the army is changing. Soldiers long exempt from hygiene expectations are now encouraged to wash. Officers set up wash basins at camp, mandate lice checks, distribute vinegar rations for rinsing. Not because they're humane, because lice carry typhus, and typhus kills more soldiers than bullets. You watch as a young recruit scrubs his shirt in a stream, then drapes it over a bush to dry. He crouches beside it, shirtless, rubbing his armpits with a piece of rock salt. His breath mists in the morning air. He shivers. But he keeps washing. You return to Paris, to the winding streets and the echoing courtyards. You see more people carrying buckets, more rags hung out to dry, more windows cracked open, not to let in air, but to let out the stink. Slowly, the city is changing, not everywhere. Not completely. But here and there, water runs. The revolutionaries spoke of rebirth, of a new France. And while they bathed it in blood, a few quietly, cautiously began to bathe it in water too. But one place still resisted the tide. One place where scent still ruled over cleanliness. Next, we go to the world of perfumers and the curious illusion of cleanliness in a bottle. You leave the warmth of the bathhouse behind your skin, still tingling with vinegar and lye, and your mind turns to those who tried to bypass soap and water altogether. Those who claimed you could smell clean even if you weren't. Those who bottled illusions. Yes, tonight, you step into the richly scented, extravagantly deceptive world of 18th century perfumers. The moment you turn the corner onto Rue Saint-Honoré, the air shifts. The stink of the streets lingers, but it's smothered by something heavier. Oozes musk, lavender, clove, bergamot, and something darker underneath. A carriage passes the nobleman inside, cloaked in cologne that rolls out like a fog bank. It hangs in the air long after the wheels disappear. That smell. It's power. It's money. and it's doing the hard work of hiding everything beneath. You step into a perfumery, a gilded salon of glass decanters and crystal vials, polished counters, and quiet attendants. The shop smells like a dream, citrus spice and damp forest floors. The perfumer greets you with a bow, already assessing your worth, your income, your filth. He recommends something floral if you're a lady, something musky if you're a gentleman, something complex if you wish to appear important. On the counter, he places a bottle of eau de cologne, a blend of alcohol, citrus oils, herbs, and rosemary. For the skin, he says, to cleanse and invigorate. You watch as a noblewoman dabs it behind her ears, between her fingers, inside her gloves. She hasn't bathed in weeks. But now she smells like oranges and mint and authority. Perfume is more than luxury here. It's survival, a defense mechanism. The French court had long used scent to create distance between bodies and their realities. Versailles ran on lavender oil and denial. Courtiers perfumed their wigs, their clothes, even their quills. One nobleman bragged that he used so much perfume on his boots that his feet never smelled. They did. He just couldn't tell anymore. And yet, even among revolutionaries, perfume doesn't vanish. You visit a Jacobin salon where powdered heads argue politics and freedom, but their bodies still reek of sweat and wine. One dips a handkerchief in violet water and presses it to his face. Cleans the spirit, he jokes. Everyone laughs. But no one disagrees. Perfume was expected at social gatherings. Scented handkerchiefs were carried constantly. And public events, plays, balls, executions were heavy with fragrance. Not because people were vain, because they were desperate. When hundreds gather in a place with no ventilation and no hygiene, the scent of bodies becomes unbearable. So they lit incense. They applied oils. They powdered their wigs. The air became a war of scents, roses versus rot, musk versus mildew. You pass a young man mixing a vial of ambergris, hardened whale bile aged into an intoxicating scent. He drops in a bit of civet from a cat's scent gland, a slice of bergamot peel, and a measure of rosewater. He corks the vial and hands it to a client with stained cuffs and yellowed teeth. The man smiles, dabs it on, and walks out straighter. Cleaner somehow, though you know better. In poor districts, perfume is rarer, but not absent. Street vendors sell diluted rosewater scraps of citrus peel to rub under the arms, sachets of dried herbs to pin beneath clothes. A washerwoman ties mint into her apron just to mask the smell of the chamber pot she must carry. A seamstress drops clove oil onto her collar every morning. These aren't luxuries, they're shields. But there's a dark irony beneath all this. Perfume was once medicine. In medieval times, physicians believed strong scents could ward off plague. They carried pomanders filled with herbs, citrus, and spices. During the Revolution, people still clung to this. They sniffed lavender against bad air, hung rosemary above their beds, burned juniper in the corners of sick rooms. They were fighting infection with fragrance. And some perfumers leaned into this belief. You find a pamphlet printed in 1791 advertising a new blend of disinfecting cologne. It claims to protect against fevers, cleanse the blood, and restore moral clarity. It sells out in days. People rub it into their palms, dab it under their noses, drop it into wine. Of course, it does nothing. But belief is powerful, and belief sells. In aristocratic households, entire rooms were scented. Potpourri simmered on grates, Bowls of citrus peels and cinnamon were placed on mantels. Curtains were sprayed with floral water, and bodies still unwashed were simply layered with scent upon scent until they became something else entirely. Not clean, not human, but presentable. Perfume covered more than body odor. It covered illness, decay, sex, fear. A dying noblewoman might be doused in rosewater before visitors came to say farewell. A political prisoner might apply the last of their cologne before being led to the scaffold. To smell good was to die with dignity, or at least the illusion of it. But perfume could betray you too. Smell too good in the wrong crowd, and you might be accused of aristocratic tendencies. During the Terror, some citizens wore less scent intentionally, grease over powder vinegar, over rose, just to avoid suspicion. One woman you meet confesses she switched from violet to mint to avoid arrest. Her cousin hadn't. He was guillotined. You visit a perfumer's back room. Glass vials line the shelves. Recipes are scrawled in Latin and French. Ingredients include iris root, benzoin, resin, ambergris, musk, cinnamon clove, orange blossom. Some are rare, some are stolen. The perfumer explains that many nobles smuggled out their favorite blends when they fled. Some even bribed officials with perfume instead of gold. And then, like everything else, the perfumers learned to adapt. They renamed old royal scents. Eau de la Reine became Eau de la République. Fragrance that once celebrated monarchs now bore patriotic labels, but the formula never changed. Just the bottle. As the revolution evolved, so too did the marketing of cleanliness. Not just in appearance, but in ideology. Clean meant pure. Pure meant Republican. To cleanse the body was to cleanse the spirit, or at least to appear as if you had. But still soap remained scarce. Water suspect. So perfume lingered. You exit the shop, your nose confused by layers of citrus and decay. A child runs past, waving a cloth scented with lavender and vinegar. He's smiling. He believes it keeps illness away. Maybe he's right. Maybe not. But one thing is clear in a world where bathing was suspect, soap was expensive, and disease was everywhere. Perfume became the lie everyone agreed to live with. And now you're ready to turn your eyes towards something even more personal, something more urgent. What happened when people got sick? Let's step into the fever rooms, into the homes where hygiene became a last frantic hope. You walk now through a narrower alley, one that smells faintly of herbs, but only because someone recently threw a bundle of lavender onto a pile of garbage. You step around it and continue following the sound of low coughing. Persistent, wet. A rhythm you've heard before. You're heading into the sick rooms now, into the homes where fevers rise like tides, and hygiene becomes less a habit and more a final defense against death. You enter a modest home's stone walls, a shuttered window, a fireplace still glowing from the night before. Inside, everything is dim, but the air is heavy, sticky. A woman lies on a straw mattress in the corner, her hair pasted to her forehead with sweat. Her lips are cracked, her eyes half-lidded. A damp cloth rests on her brow. It's the only thing separating her from burning up completely. Her daughter sits nearby, dipping the cloth in a bowl of water that hasn't been changed since morning. The water is murky now, streaked with sweat, traces of blood, maybe even pus. No soap. No antiseptic, just hope. The daughter squeezes the cloth, replaces it, and whispers a prayer. It's all she has. In this time when someone falls ill, the first response isn't cleaning. It's fear. Because illness spreads fast, and no one knows how. So families close the shutters. They light candles. They burn bundles of rosemary and sage. Some sprinkle vinegar on the floor. Some scrub the walls with urine or ash. All of them are guessing. You step into the room farther, and the smell deepens. Underneath the sweat is the sour tang of vomit, the dry metallic scent of blood, the must of unwashed linen. The woman hasn't moved in 2 days. Her mattress is damp. No one dares replace the straw. They believe motion might make her worse, so she lies in it, soaking, fading. In another home across the street, a man is recovering from a wound, a nasty slice along his side. A neighbor dressed it with a strip of fabric from an old shirt. It wasn't clean, just clean enough. Now the wound is swelling red around the edges, leaking something yellow. The man groans every time the cloth is peeled away. Still, they reuse it, because that strip is the only cloth they have. You pass a home where a baby has the pox. The child cries non-stop, its skin blistered, its face swollen. The parents have tied a cloth soaked in vinegar over the crib, believing it will ward off evil air. They don't wash the cloth. They just hang more next to it. When the pustules burst, they wipe the baby with a rag they also use to clean the floor. No one tells them this is wrong. No one knows it is. Hygiene in sickness is a strange and fractured ritual. Some still believe in sweating out illness, wrapping the patient in blankets, sealing the windows, placing hot bricks beneath the bed to drive the fever out. But the sweat has nowhere to go. It soaks the bedding, the clothing, the skin. People sleep in it, breathe it in, bathe in it unknowingly. A doctor arrives at one of the homes. He wears no gloves, no mask, no apron. His hands are bare, his coat stained. He smells of wine and rosemary water. He examines the patient by touch, then checks his pulse. He opens his mouth, squints, nods gravely. Too much black bile, he mutters. He prescribes purging, then bloodletting, then leeches. He doesn't wash his hands. You follow him to his next stop. The same hands touch another patient, another wound, another fevered brow. He wipes his fingers on a cloth tied to his belt. That cloth, it's crusted stiff. That cloth travels with him from home to home. It might carry more death than any rat. In some homes, the sick are isolated, sent to a loft or a cellar. The belief is that illness can travel through sight, that to look upon the sick too long is to risk your own health. So they're left alone, with a jug of water, a plate of bread, a prayer. In one home, a woman burns feathers over coals. She waves the smoke over her husband's body. He's delirious. She believes the smell will chase away the spirits. She hasn't washed his sheets in a month. But she sprinkles rose water on the pillow. It's the best she can do. Some homes have small altars, candles, and holy cards, pressed flowers, relics. Not to make the sick room cleaner, but holier. They believe divine scent, incense, frankincense, myrrh can purify what soap cannot. The logic is spiritual, but beneath it lies desperation. The city tries sometimes. Notices are posted encouraging citizens to scrub thresholds and air linens when fever strikes. But the messages are vague, the remedies outdated, the action left to individuals. And when a whole household falls ill, there's no one left to boil water or fetch vinegar. You hear coughing from the apartment above. You climb the rickety stairs. There, a boy no older than 10 sits alone. His mother is asleep or unconscious on a mattress soaked through. The boy has been wiping her face with a handkerchief dipped in ale. He doesn't know what else to do. He hasn't eaten today, but he keeps wiping, keeps whispering, "You'll be all right." You step outside again, blinking against the light. It's midday now. Laundry flaps from windows. Baskets of chamber pots line the street. But you know that inside dozens, maybe hundreds of people lie in fevered silence, wrapped in filth, praying for a breeze, for a cure, for anything. And hygiene in these moments becomes something tragic. Not a habit, not a practice, but a longing, a luxury the dying can no longer afford. The sick need rest, clean sheets, boiled rags, and fresh water. They get none of it, not out of cruelty, out of lack. And the caregivers, they sacrifice themselves. Every cloth they touch, every brow they wipe, every chamber pot they empty, increases the odds they'll catch what they're trying to cure. But they keep doing it. And that quiet heroism hidden in back rooms and under flea-bitten blankets is as revolutionary as anything shouted in the streets. Next, we step into the world of birth, of midwives' labor beds, and the horrifying risks of bringing life into such a filthy world. Prepare yourself, because childbirth during the French Revolution was anything but clean. You move now toward the quieter quarters, where cries are not revolutionary chants, but the sharper, more primal sounds of childbirth, the kind that echoes from behind shuttered windows and closed doors. No marching, no slogans, just a woman pushing against the weight of death to bring life into the world. And in revolutionary France, to give birth was to gamble with filth, fever, and fate. You approach a home marked by a ribbon tied around the door handle, a silent signal to the neighborhood. A child is coming. Don't knock. Don't interrupt. But you are allowed inside. And what you find is not a place of joy, but of solemn tension. The birthing room is dark, despite the hour. Heavy curtains drawn to keep out the bad air. One candle flickers near the bed, which sags under the weight of a laboring woman. Her hair is plastered to her neck. Her nightdress is already stained with blood and sweat. A basin nearby is half filled with pink water. A rag floats in it, drifting gently, like something already dead. There is no midwife yet. Only her sister and an older neighbor, both of whom have assisted births before. They wring out cloths, whisper prayers, and wait for the moment when the baby crowns. But you can already see it, the panic behind their eyes. One has washed her hands in wine. The other hasn't washed at all. The midwife arrives an hour later, out of breath, arms full of rags and herbs. She smells of old smoke and lavender, the scent of urgency. She pushes up her sleeves and gets to work without delay. She doesn't wash her hands. No one suggests she should. The tools she lays out on the wooden table are simple scissors, a length of thread, a dull knife, and a vial of oil. Nothing is sterile. Nothing is even especially clean. She kneels between the mother's legs and begins her chant, half encouragement, half incantation. The baby is coming. You can hear it in the woman's scream. The air thickens with heat and fear, and something else, something iron. Blood. There is no running water, no sanitation. The birth will happen on this mattress surrounded by linens already damp with earlier contractions. And when the baby comes, flesh blood slippery and gasping, the midwife wraps it in the same cloth she used last week, used for 3 other births. Washed, yes, but not boiled, not sterilized, because those concepts don't exist yet. The cord is cut with scissors wiped on the midwife's apron. The child wails, a boy. Everyone exhales. But the danger isn't over. The mother shudders. The afterbirth must come next. And that's where things often go wrong. You've heard of childbed fever, the infection that comes not from the child or the act of birth itself, but from the unclean hands of the midwife, from dirty rags, from bacteria that no one knows exists. But they know something is wrong when the mother's fever spikes hours later, when her skin turns gray, when the blood doesn't stop. One midwife you meet keeps a bottle of vinegar with her. She believes it purifies. She dabs her hands before and after the birth, and her mothers survive more often. She doesn't know why, but she trusts the habit. Others mock her. They say she wastes time, but she says quietly, "I'd rather waste vinegar than bury another girl." The wealthier households sometimes employ surgeons for complicated births. You visit one. The surgeon arrives in a powdered wig, a crimson waistcoat, a blade in a leather case. He doesn't kneel. He commands. He orders the maid to hold the mother down. The woman screams. He reaches in with bare hands. He pulls the baby free. The room is awash in blood now. The baby breathes. The mother does not. No one cries. Just silence. Then action. The surgeon leaves. The maid cleans the sheets. The baby is passed to a nursemaid who will breastfeed him alongside her own. The body will be buried quietly. Perhaps there will be a mass. Perhaps not. Even when things go well, the process is far from clean. Mothers are rarely washed after giving birth. The sheets may be flipped, not changed. The bedding will remain damp for days. The mattress never dries. The risk of infection hovers for weeks. If the mother makes it to the 10th day without fever, she's considered lucky. If she makes it to 30, she's considered reborn. You visit a midwife's quarters, next tiny, overstuffed with herbs, books, candles. She keeps records of every birth, names scratched into the margins, notes like "good delivery, smelled of iron," or "child born cold, revived with spirits." She has a small bowl she uses for washing. It's never enough. She tells you the worst part is when people blame her. They say it's the mother's fault. Or mine. They don't blame the filth, or the air, or the rags. She pauses. But I do. She's seen women die in every way. Bled out, infected, fevered, starved. She's seen babies born without breath, born with teeth, born two at once. She believes in God, but more than that, she believes in hot water, and she can't always get it. And what of the babies? They're swaddled tight, often for days at a time. The cloths wrapped so snug they don't move. The idea is that it protects their limbs, straightens their spines, but it also traps everything urine, feces, sweat. Rashes bloom. Infections start. Diapers don't exist, just layer upon layer of linen rarely washed. A baby cries, not from hunger, from heat, from itch, from being sealed in a cocoon of filth. When you walk through the poorer districts, you see women giving birth in single-room homes with other children watching chickens clucking nearby the chamber pot, close enough to reach. There's no privacy, no comfort, and certainly no sanitation. And yet they keep doing it, because life must go on. Because amid the death and the stink and the slow collapse of civility, the one thing France keeps doing, no matter how filthy, no matter how dangerous, is birthing more people. But now let's shift again. Let's follow one of those babies. Let's see what happens as they grow into children in a world where baths are rare, toilets are worse, and playtime means wrestling with rats. Childhood during the French Revolution was anything but innocent. Let's follow their steps. You follow the child now newly born from the dim, suffocating room of labor out into the wider world of revolutionary France, a world where childhood begins in grime and continues in it. There's no soft cradle of hygiene, no sanitized nursery, no sparkling rattle or boiled blanket. Only noise filth and the sharp slap of survival. The baby's earliest days are spent swaddled, unmoving, wrapped tightly in linen from neck to toe, sometimes with arms pinned flat, the idea being to keep the baby still and straight. But in practice, it means days without movement, weeks without a full wash. Swaddling cloths rarely changed quickly sour with urine, feces, and milk. Diapering, as you know, it doesn't exist. So the baby's delicate skin is in constant contact with waste. Rashes appear, blisters, infections. Crying is constant and often ignored. You visit a home where 4 children sleep in the same straw mattress, 2 swaddled, 2 not. The older ones scratch constantly. Their scalps are riddled with lice. Their feet are black from walking barefoot on stone floors, slick with waste. One boy coughs wet and hard into a blanket already stiff with mucus. His sister lifts her head to look at you. Her face is streaked with soot. Her hands with something worse. They haven't bathed in days, probably weeks. Their mother tries. She scrubs their faces with cold water each morning, then rubs vinegar into their hair to kill the lice. It stings. The children squirm, but it's all she can do. She boils what rags she can, but fuel is expensive, and the pot is needed for soup. Soap is used only for hands, if at all. Outside, children play in alleyways. Their games involve stones, sticks, and whatever garbage they can turn into toys. A broken bowl becomes a drum. A horse's rib becomes a sword. They laugh, but the sound is punctuated by coughing, sneezing, scratching. The dirt beneath their fingernails never leaves. Their teeth, what few have come in, are already stained. Some rot before they fall out. Others fall out too early. The air they breathe is filled with smoke from cooking fires, soot from chimneys, and the fermenting reek of chamber pots tipped from upper windows. They're used to it, but their lungs aren't. At school, if they attend, there's no soap, no towels, no latrines. Children urinate in corners or out in the street on the way home. Teachers try to enforce basic hygiene, wiping noses, checking for lice, inspecting fingernails. But with no resources, they fail more often than they succeed. The classroom smells of damp wool, old ink, and childhood disease. You visit a school now mid-lesson. The children sit hunched over slate boards. One boy sneezes onto the bench, wipes his nose with his sleeve, then passes his writing tool to a friend. A girl scratches her scalp so hard she draws blood. Another child fidgets because he's infested with fleas. The teacher, red-eyed and weary, says nothing. Children here are not protected from death, nor from filth. Many have already seen siblings die from fever, from diarrhea, from nothing anyone could name. And the youngest are still expected to help carrying water, tending fires, scrubbing floors. Their chores begin before their immune systems are strong enough to handle the world they live in. In wealthier homes, the story is only slightly better. A nursemaid might scrub a child's face each morning with rose water or vinegar. A bath might happen once a month in a tin basin filled with warm water and herbs. The child is dressed in clean linen, their hair powdered, their shoes polished. But beneath the frills, they're still unwashed. Their teeth still rot. Their fingernails still collect grime from the floorboards. You watch a little girl sit in a nursery brushing a doll's matted hair. She licks her fingers before turning the page of a storybook, unaware her hands were just picking lice from her toy's scalp. The maid watches, but doesn't stop her. She's seen worse. In the gardens, you find a pack of children, sons of officials, daughters of tailors, and merchants, digging through the dirt with bare hands. Their faces are flushed with laughter. But one boy's arm is wrapped in a blood-stained rag. He cut it 2 days ago. His mother rubbed wine into it and hoped. The cut has turned green at the edges. No one here talks about germs. Germs haven't been imagined yet. But people know that filth kills. They just don't know how. They tell children not to walk barefoot, not to share spoons, not to drink standing water. And when they get sick, they're bled, or purged, or dosed with mercury. Rarely washed. In one tenement, you watch a mother dunk her toddler in a bucket of cold water. It's not a bath, it's punishment. The child had smeared feces on the wall. The mother curses, scrubbing him roughly with a dry cloth. No soap, no warmth. Just rage. Later, in a more stable home, you meet a grandmother who insists on clean clothes every Sunday. You must enter God's house clean, she says. She washes the children with rainwater collected in a barrel scrubs behind their ears, brushes their hair with a stiff hog's bristle brush. She doesn't know about hygiene as science, but she believes in order, in decency. And she's kept more children alive than most. And the children, they endure. They grow up fighting off fevers, infections, boils, parasites, rashes, and rot. Some lose toes to frostbite. Some lose eyes to pus-filled infections. Some lose siblings to dysentery in the middle of the night. But they also laugh. They also sing. They wrestle in the mud, chase chickens through manure, drink milk straight from the goat. And somehow they survive. Not all of them, but some. The revolution hasn't brought cleanliness, but it has planted the seeds of reform. And now as the world quiets around you, it's time to lay down those thoughts. Let's drift into rest. You've walked through centuries of filth, sweat, and invention. But before you sleep, let's wind down slowly, ever so gently, just as Paris settles into the night.